What's good, Badger fans? We are back to tip off another edition of a Shot of Wisky podcast brought to you by the good people at New Amendment as a part of Beyond the Big Ten Podcast Network. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcasts, and on YouTube and all other socials. That's Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok with the handle at Beyond the Big Ten. Not spelled out, but the number 10. I am former Badger All-American Jordan Taylor, and back this week by popular demand is my guy, Badger All-American, 2011 second-round pick and 8-year NBA vet, the one and only Jon Leuer. John, you got a week off for load management last week, man. What's good with you?
Yeah, I'm getting old, man. I need that load management. And back by popular demand, I don't know if old washed up Big Ten / NBA players in popular demand, but I'll take it. I appreciate the hype.
Yeah, man. You always popular with the fans, man. You always popular with the fans. Before we get into it, man, it's Super Bowl week, so we'd be remiss not to discuss it. Who you got, Chiefs or Eagles?
I think the Eagles have a better team, but I think Mahomes is just that dude, and I think he's going to show us why. Jalen Hurts could be that dude, but I like the Chiefs because I think Mahomes is going to go crazy.
You know what? You don't have much quarterback sense. I know you think Tom Brady's better than Peyton Manning still, so I'm glad to hear you got some sense on the Mahomes argument. So
I've been saying Mahomes is going to be the greatest quarterback ever since his rookie season, and that is on record in our text thread.
You gonna go back and get the receipts, man? You gonna go back and find? You have said that. I'll give credit where credit is due. I always keep it real. You know what I'm saying? So you have said that, and Mahomes is looking like that with his second NFL MVP, but. Let's see what happens. Should be a good game. We just wanted to touch on that. Let's jump right into it, man. Big win at Penn State for our Badgers this week. The only game that we'll get to cover this week as Nebraska comes up a little bit later today at the time of this recording. But let's jump into the X's and O's, man, with Penn State. You know how we do it. Welcome back. I'm going to let you lead it off. We go with things we didn't like to start out.
Okay, didn't like. I have just one thing, and it's a grievance with the officials, and not just these officials, but every official in the sport of basketball. Backing down on post-ups. Steven Crowell had a back down, and the guy clearly flops, right, as soon as he feels the contact, and they call a charge. I think that rule should be banned from basketball. Like, if you're playing post defense, you have to hold your ground and just eliminate offensive fouls because it's so frustrating. It's at every level. Right. I see it coaching in high school. It's even worse. Guys just fall down and it's automatically a charge. And it's just something that's got to change. And I'm so tired of seeing that call over and over again, whether it's in the Big Ten, whether it's in, even in the NBA, sometimes you'll see it. But that's just one thing that just gets me, man. I'm so pissed when I watch that and I see that.
That's crazy you say that because it's obviously in Europe as well. We actually had a ref call a flop. One ref called a foul, and the second ref came in from across the court to call a flop, like in an open court foul. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. But obviously the flopping alone has been getting a lot of attention from the likes of I think Fran Fraschilla weighed in on it. Maybe a lot of people have weighed in on it. So I think you're right. I also think that we're going to have to give you your own segment where you can just rant and yell at the cloud. You turn into that old dude, man. You turn into Homer Simpson's dad, man.
And disclaimer on that, I definitely used that technique when I was playing in Wisconsin for sure because it worked, right? The ref's going to call an offensive foul, so why wouldn't you do it? But then when I got to the NBA and I when I was with the Grizzlies playing against Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol every day in practice, like you can't just sit there and take charges against them in practice. So like I had to learn how to actually play post defense. Use leverage, hold my ground, absorb the back down. And honestly, that's just how the game should be played. Nobody wants to come out here and watch people fly.
No one wants to watch officials in general. And it seems, honestly, I don't remember officials being this, what's the word we're looking for? Scrutinized when we were playing. But it seems like officials at every level are just struggling right now. It really does. And I don't know what that is but the calls, the game's gotten faster. So maybe that has something to do with it. And just, it's more difficult to officiate now where, I guess leagues are incentivizing refs to make, those touch type fouls and things like that. They're obviously being incentivized to call flops and stuff like that. So it's also, you have to look at it from that side. If they want to work in March, they have to make those calls too. So it it goes both ways. So your grievance maybe should be with the NCAA more so than the officials, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm with you as far as things we didn't like. I didn't have much, man. It was a good game. I had to nitpick. One of them was Penn State's "We Are" chant has to go. That absolutely has to go. On TV, it sounds so bad. I think it's the dumbest chant in the world. No one cares that you are Penn State. Y'all are whack. Y'all don't win anything. And that's word to my boy Tim Frazier. No disrespect. I love y'all, but y'all never win nothing. And I talked to Taylor Battle.
And you know who else has that? And you know who else has that chant? Talking about the wackest schools? Who else? Our biggest rival. We are Marquette. Come on, man. You can't come up with a better cheer than that.
Facts. So that one has to go, man. But we got a really good guest coming in here in a second. So let's get into the things that we did. Oh, one thing I didn't like actually was the late game. I liked the late game execution. We got Chucky off, especially the late game shot by Chucky. He got the switch with Connor Winter, and the second time he got Jalen Pickett. So those are little things that, as a young team, they have to be, notice. It's an easier shot over Connor Winter than Jalen Pickett. But let's get into the things we did like very quickly. I'll start off. For me, it was the pinch post split action that Coach Gard seemed to put in. He's put in a little bit of it, but they really ran it a lot this week into dribble handoffs. Got Chucky going downhill, and then got it's easier to get post touches that way as well.
Yeah, no, I mean there was a lot of likes offensively. I think we made a concerted effort on getting the ball into the paint, and causing breakdowns in their defense through penetration. And our interior passing was amazing this game. I mean, every time somebody drove, it was a drop off. Our rule that we have, drop it to the floor when you drive into the paint. We had so many assists off that, and that was great to see us. Because when we get into the paint and we can score in the paint, it opens up our threes.
100%. The pace was great as well. Tyler Wall was great returning to form. He looked like he was on balance. He looked like the Tyler Wall of old. He had a couple of baskets where it looked like he was about to fall down, and he was able to regain his balance and score there. So that was a sight for sore eyes. 16 and 8 assists for him. So, and then I'll say made Jalen Pickett really work. I know he had 17, 8 and 8, but 18 and 19 or 8 of 19 shooting, and every shot seemed to be contested or tough. So I thought it was really one of the better games we played. And it's exciting because I think to have the full squad back, it really kind of shows that if we can find that consistency, I think we'll be a tournament team.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Tyler Wall, because he was the other thing I liked, just seeing him get more and more healthy, right? We got some numbers on this, okay? Wisconsin averages 65 points per game without him on the court defensively, okay? When he's on the court, we give up 59 points a game. So that's just such a huge asset having him on the floor. And then offensively, same thing. There's that huge discrepancy with him on the floor versus when he's been out. So as he gets healthier and healthier, I think that's going to bode well for us as we make this stretch run and hopefully work our way into the tournament.
100%. And speaking of the tournament, we're going to get into our scouting report section right here, man, of the show. We got a very special guest this week, man. We welcome in a true legend in the sport. Mike DeCourcy's covered the game for 35 years, 32 Final Fours. He's a member of the U.S. Basketball Writers Hall of Fame. 28 years at Sporting News. It's kind of like the Kobe Bryant or the Red R back over there. Studio analyst at the Big Ten Network and bracketologist at Fox Sports. Mike, you need no intro, but we want to show love and give you one anyway. And, we're super happy to have you here to talk about the tournament.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike, for coming on.
Oh, glad to do it, John. Great to hear it from you guys, and more than delighted to join you.
Man, so now that you're here, we're glad you're here, but we got a little beef with you, man. We just beat Penn State. That's our 5th quad 1 win. You still got us on the first 4 out. What's happening? Let us know.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that Wisconsin has to overcome, and it really starts with the analytic part of the process, and that is an important part of what they do. Wisconsin's metrics are not great. At this point, 73rd in the net. The other metrics as well are not super flattering to the Badgers. We're talking about, at this point, them needing to improve in KenPom. They're 64th in KenPom, 66th in the BPI. These are all these metrics are contained on what they call the team sheet, what the selection committee calls the team sheet. And if I want to know if I'm one of the members of the selection committee, one of the 10 members of the selection committee, and I want to know what's Wisconsin's resume look like, I call up their team sheet. And these metrics that I'm talking about are on there. Now, there are also the metrics that are not based on point spread and those sorts of things. They're the result-based metrics. And Wisconsin fares better there. 37th in strength of record, 44th in KPI. So I think they're straddling the idea of in or out at this point. And so anybody that has them in, it's defensible. I mean, there are teams that you can say that I'm surprised sometimes that are in a field or whatever. But anybody that has the Badgers in, I totally get it. To an extent, some of the teams that are still hanging on to first four status, like North Carolina, you're kind of, with what they have and what they're capable of, you're kind of waiting for them to play themselves all the way out. You're talking about a team that has 4 starters back from the defending national runner-ups. They have all those guys, and they've done some good things, and they've played enough good basketball that they haven't completely excused themselves from the process. And if they continue to lose, continue to play at the rate that they are, then they'll fall out. And in the Badger situation, if they play the last month like an NCAA tournament team, they'll be an NCAA tournament team. And the schedule in the Big Ten provides you the opportunity to show you're that. So I think they're very close. And honestly, after last night, if I were doing it now, like if I were doing a live bracket every single day, I would probably replace New Mexico. They would be out now, and I'd replace them with either A&M or the Badgers.
Mike, I have a question for you. You mentioned North Carolina playing themselves out, Wisconsin possibly playing themselves into the tournament. As we look at this schedule down the stretch run, right, I think we have 7 games left. What's your magic number for wins where you say if Wisconsin wins X amount of games, they're in for sure?
Yeah, people always want me to do that, and I don't do it because that concept really doesn't exist. I mean, the magic number
because it's so fluid.
Yeah, exactly. Because everybody else is, people are, like I said, like Carolina's going one way, Wisconsin's going the other. That's kind of what the Badgers would want. So if I'm a Badgers fan, I'm rooting against teams like Carolina, Kentucky, New Mexico. Last night was a big win for Air Force and a big win for the Badgers. So that's what you're looking at. So, like I said, I kind of jokingly, the magic number is 7 because if they win all of them, there's no question. But that's not realistic or logical. You look at what they have left. You've got 3 road games. Mm-hmm. I don't think 2 of them for a team in the Badger situation are losable. And that doesn't make them easy. Nebraska has beaten teams that are in this hunt. They beat Penn State a week ago, a little less than a week ago. Minnesota, to close the season, is a game that the Badgers would have to win. And then everybody else is at home, Michigan, Rutgers, Purdue, and then there's the one road Michigan game that, as I said, I think if they lose that, it won't really hurt them. And I don't think it'll hurt them, obviously, if they lose to Purdue, but it's a great opportunity for a team trying to get in. So if they win those games, you're quote unquote supposed to win home games against tournament caliber opposition, then they'll get in. It's not an easy thing to do. The more we see the team get back to health, the more we see Tyler Wall play like his best basketball, and he played very well in the most recent game. Mm-hmm. That's an encouraging sign because I think this is a tournament quality team, but they have to back that up with the resume.
It's always hard as a fan. Like, I know this, again, all these questions that we ask you are difficult to answer, but if you say you do lose to Nebraska on the road, but you beat Purdue at home and they're still ranked number 1, does the loss hold more weight than the win, or the win hold more weight than the loss? Like how is that viewed?
Yeah, the win would hold more weight. There's no doubt. Jay Billis says this, and I think maybe I'm about 85% there with him. Jay says that everybody's going to lose. It's who you beat that really matters. Mm. And I think I agree with him. Like I said, I'm about 85% there with him because there are certain losses that are really punitive. Like if the Badgers had the Iowa loss to Eastern Illinois, I mean, that one's a really difficult loss for Iowa to explain. Now they've done enough to fight their way to the middle of the field for Mox and with me and others, so it's not going to be as punitive as it could be if they were a bubble type team. Losing to Nebraska just hurts because one, it's a road game, so you can show some. They want to see you win on the road. That's an important thing. You can show some road muscle there, and it's an opportunity to do that without having to go to Purdue and say win. So that's not a really realistic thing. I mean, not very many teams are going to do that. So, but you're on the road. You're playing a good team. You're playing against a great crowd. Pinnacle Bank Arena, always fabulous. You guys know that. So you have to play really well to beat them. And they're doing a nice job right now. Keisei Tamanaga had such a great game on our air on Saturday, and was so much fun to watch. And you have to be able to guard that. Constant movement, constantly aware of what the best place to be. So it's really important for the Badgers to play great defense in that game. And I think that as you go down, I mean, I mentioned Michigan, you play them twice. It's too early for either of those games to be an elimination game. A true elimination game is usually only going to happen in a conference tournament. On the rarest of occasions, maybe in a final game of a regular season. But it is a game against your competition. Michigan's in the next 4 out right now for me, trying to climb. So if you take them out once or twice, that puts a dent in their resume, and it only helps you.
What would that win do? Beating Michigan, having them on the next 4 out. Obviously, that kind of distances, like you said. But is there at all like a quota, so to speak, for Big Ten teams? Like I know you have 8 Big Ten teams, 8 Big 12 teams. Say there's, like you said, New Mexico and Wisconsin. Is there any type of bias towards bigger conferences for entertainment value, anything like that? I don't even know if we're allowed to say that, but
you're allowed to ask, and the answer is no. There's no bias. I've often said that I don't think that the committee regularly values dominance in the mid-major and low-major conferences at the level that they should, because history has shown that teams that truly dominate, I'm talking about winning more than 80% of your games on the season, they usually do very well in the NCAA tournament. And I don't think the committee has always valued that. So one could say that they are biased toward the strength that exists in the biggest conferences. But between a conference like the Mountain West, which is really almost, I tried to, about 10 years ago, to come up with a phrase that I call fringe major, because the Atlantic 10 and the American and Mountain West aren't really, and if you compare them and go to a San Diego State game, and then you go to a Big Ten game, and then you go to let's say a Missouri Valley game. If you compare San Diego State's game and what it feels like and what it looks like, it's going to look more like the Big Ten game than it is like, and look and feel more like a Big Ten game than like a Valley game. So I don't think they are true mid-major leagues. And so it's not going to hurt. It doesn't hurt New Mexico to be in the Mountain West. It hurts them to continue to lose games that either against a team like Air Force that should be winnable, or close games that they're losing in their conference without having backed it up out of conference with significant achievement. So that's what's taking them down. Meanwhile, teams like Nevada are climbing and they'll go in. But in terms of the number of teams in a conference, I mean, we saw the Big East get 11 in 2011. In 2020, when we didn't have a tournament, my mock and just about everybody's mock at the end of basketball that year had 10 Big Ten teams in. And we've had 9 each of the last 2 years. And if the Badgers were to continue to succeed, most likely they would not replace another Big Ten team, because there aren't any there other than maybe Maryland, maybe Northwestern. There aren't many dangling close to the edge. They probably supplant someone, I don't know, like a Carolina or someone like that, who are going the opposite direction.
Perfect. I think Badger fans would be happy to hear that. So last question before we let you go out, just to summarize everything. When we look at it, what are we looking at? 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, and the Badgers team sheet needs to look like this in terms of KPI, what are the numbers we're a shoo-in for sure? I forget the exact numbers you said. I think you said 66, 67 right now. So for the Badgers to be a shoo-in, what are we looking at?
Right now in the net, Badgers are at 73. And look, there are teams that have made it from that range before. So it's not, you just don't want to have to set precedents. You'd rather the success that you have, it's not going to climb to the 40s from where they are now, unless they went out and won 7 games by 20 points. It's not going to climb that high. But if they succeed at the level necessary, they'll probably get somewhere into the 60s. And there are other teams in the 60s that are in my bracket. Pitt's an example of a team that's flirting around the 60 mark. USC is 57 now, and they're still in my bracket. So Pitt's is a good example because I said they were in the 60s, but they're actually up to 52 now. And a week ago, they were in the 60s, or 10 days ago. So there is room for the Badgers to climb. It just takes performance. And I think that schedule sets up nicely for the Badgers to do that. And with Tyler coming around to full health, or closer to full health, I think that sets up nicely for the Badgers to get there. I think there's a lot in their favor, even though they're not in my mock. I think you'll find them, if you look at the bracket matrix, you'll find them in a wide variety of mock brackets that it posts a consensus of brackets. And I think you'll find them in a lot of people's tournament fields. Not universal. If I'm looking at the matrix now, they are the literal next team out. They are they have 42 out of 104 brackets now have them in. So they are the literal next team out, and I think they're a couple of wins away from being close to unanimous along the bubble line.
So best case scenario, let's say we go 5-2 and go to the Big Ten championship. What is best case scenario? It's a 5 seed.
You're in the Big Ten
seed?
championship game, and you go 5-2. It's really more about seeding at that point.
Can we get as high as a 6 seed?
And I think that's a long way to climb.
Okay.
But the number of, by the time you got to that, the number of quad 1 wins on top of the 5 they already have would be significant. And the fact that the Badgers don't have any quad 3 or 4 losses is important as well. Mm-hmm. I don't think that, other than going to Minnesota, I don't think there's a quad 3 or 4 game left for them. So they're going to keep. They're more than likely going to keep clean quad 3 and 4 all the way through. And the other thing that's in their favor is they haven't played a ton of games in those categories. The combined 6 in 3 and 4. All the rest of their season is in 1 and 2. So those are all in favor of the Badgers as well.
Do you have something, Jon?
Yeah, Mike, I had one final question for you. I just wanted to take a step back and kind of some big picture context. You've been doing this for a long, long time, many decades, as Jordan mentioned. So I feel like you're the perfect guy to ask this to, because we need to talk some Badger fans off the ledge right now because we're on the bubble. I think we missed the tournament once in the last 24 years. You mentioned earlier, Kentucky's on the bubble, North Carolina's on the bubble, the so-called, blue bloods. I think Wisconsin has earned the title of blue bloods with the success we've had over the last 25 years. But, could you just provide some context for fans to say, in all the years you've been doing this, and you've seen Coach K at Duke be on the bubble. You've seen, obviously when we were my sophomore year with Bo Ryan, we were on the bubble, made it as a 12 seed. So can you just talk about how this is kind of the ebbs and flows of a program, and some years you're going to be fighting for your life, and some years you might be a 2 seed?
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't happen often that a Carolina or Duke winds up in this position. It doesn't. It usually takes extraordinary circumstances for that to be the case. But the wide variety of programs that are in high major basketball, most of them have years like this. Some of them have years where they fall all the way out. It hasn't happened at Michigan State. Tom Izzo's been incredible over the last 25, 30 years. He's been amazing. Kansas, it doesn't happen because Kansas does, they do a great job there. And Bill Self is one of the all-time greats. So it doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens to most. And I think that, you're talking about a program that a year ago was at the very top of the Big Ten charts. So they've had tremendous seasons under Greg Gard. Let's not forget that that in the time that Bo was there, 14 and 15, and especially 15, were somewhat anomalies. I mean, that was a perfect storm. They had 4 or 5 NBA guys. They had, the National Player of the Year. Frank had an incredible year. That was an extraordinary time. But the base of Bo's program was we finished 4th or better in the Big Ten every year. That's what really made Wisconsin basketball exceptional during Bo's 15, 16 seasons. That's what made it exceptional. And Greg has not deviated much from that. They've been very close to that level. And Abby Schnabel, who used to be with the Madison paper and now is in Pittsburgh, asked me on Media Day and showed me like the sheet that had them pick 9th. And I'm like, I don't know if they're going back to the top 4 again, but they're not finishing 9th. I just didn't think that was going to happen then, and I still don't think that'll happen now. As long as they're healthy, as long as they're as healthy as they are now, or better if Tyler continues to feel better, I still think they find a way to wind up at least getting 1 bye in the Big Ten tournament. And as I said, I think their schedule sets up well for them to take a good run at making the field.
Awesome. That's great news to hear. As Jon said, I'm sure that will talk some Badger fans off the ledge coming from someone as esteemed as yourself. Mike, we greatly appreciate you joining the show and giving us that insight. And we look forward to hopefully having you back on again if you're available. But we know you're a busy man, and hopefully you don't get too many people on your back during this time. But, you always got our support, and enjoy the March Madness season. That is Mike DeCourcy. Jon, that was a great question for you. I think just to give some context, man, to Badger fans. Obviously, a lot being said right now as far and we've talked that at great length, so we don't need to revisit. But I thought that was a great question. Interesting stuff from Mike, and it sounds like the Badgers are on their way to the tournament. I think that's no surprise here, but good to get that reassurance, I think.
Absolutely. And look, it's right there in front of us. It's right there in front of us. If we want to make this happen, there's not a game on the schedule that we can't win, and there's not one that we can't lose. So, you're going to have to earn it if you want to play in March.
So that being said, this week, obviously, as Mike said, got to get that win at Nebraska today. They're 12th in the Big Ten, 11-14, 4-10. In the Big Ten, Derek Walker is their leading scorer at 13 points a game, shooting 50% from 3. And again, as Mike mentioned, Kaisi Tominaga, who is Japanese. And actually, as I played in Japan, I'm actually excited for him. He averages 12 points a game. He's a guy who actually will make a lot of money in Japan if he so chooses. So that's actually it's actually cool for me to see, just playing internationally for so long to see a guy like that.
You're so global now. You're so cultured and global now. How far you've come.
Man, it's on accident too, man. It's on accident. I swear to God, I went from I used to watch Gargoyles, and SpongeBob with Rob in the dorms every day, and now I'm over here eating yakisoba and stuff in Japan. So it's been great, man. It's been great. But got to get that Nebraska win. Then obviously Michigan at home, who's 8-5 in a 4-way tie for second. They've won 3 straight. Hunter Dickinson averages 20-10 at home and 15-7 on the road, but 21-9 in the last 3 wins. So that'll be a good matchup for Stephen Crow to kind of see where he's at, and another good test for him. See how far he's come. I think that's probably maybe the second toughest matchup behind Trace Jackson Davis in the conference at the big man spot. Edie as well. Yep. So, although I think, for me, I think Hunter Dickinson, Edie's size obviously is tough, but I think Hunter Dickinson is a tougher match. He shoots it a little bit. He steps away from the basket, shoots 39%. It's not, he's not a shooter, but, obviously we don't like him over here at Wisconsin after what he had to say.
That's because you're a guard. You don't have to guard a 7'3", 290-pound guy like that. That's a tougher matchup, I promise you.
But it's crazy as a guard. Like, if I have a 6'4" guard who's going to play physical, I'd rather play that than a 5'11" guard who's speedy and is going to, you can't really touch him. who can shoot the ball, can move around. So
well, that's because you're strong. You're strong as hell. So I think small guards would tell you the same thing. Like I think small guards would rather play against bigger guards than faster guards. Okay.
But I could, that's just me. So I guess I look at it through that lens. Yeah.
Yeah. But back to your preview of the Michigan game. I don't know if you know this, Jordan, but there's been a little bit of tension, just a little bit over the last year with Wisconsin and Michigan. So that will be, we'll have to have a great, hopefully we're celebrating a great win on the next podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody in the world should be tuning in for that game and the handshake lines.
The handshake line. Right? Although we've been assured that beef was squashed, but I guess we'll find out soon. And then obviously Rutgers at home next Saturday. We'll have our next podcast after that game as well. Also 8-5 in the Big Ten in that two-way tie. Steve Peichel has those guys playing well. Very balanced team. Cliff Amori, 13 and a half a game and 10 rebounds. Cam Spencer averaging 13, 4 and 4, shooting 42% from three. And then Paul Mulcahy, who's 9 and 5 assists per game at 41%. Like I said, they play hard, really well-rounded team. A better team at home, as most are, but still quite a challenge for the Badgers. So if you can get all those three, I think that, honestly, that might put us in the tournament if you can go 3-0 this week. And then obviously win the games you're supposed to with Minnesota, Iowa at home. And you're looking
Did you not just listen to anything Mike DeCourcy just said? He said there's no magic number. It's fluid. So stop trying to put a magic number on it if we're in or not.
John, you should know by now I don't be listening to nothing none of y'all say. I'm living in my own world. So like I'm a put a magic number on it. And that's what it is. Okay. Win these three and then beat Minnesota and Iowa and we're good. That's what I'm saying. I like it. But moving forward, man, let's get to Word on Campus. This week, we're going to talk about, for you, and we just kind of briefed it or touched on it real quick, who is the best player in the Big Ten right now, in your eyes?
Zach Edey, and I don't think it's close. Really? I think he's the best player in the country. And I love Trace Jackson Davis, love him. I think he's got a bright future in the NBA as well. I think he's, I could see him filling like a Brandon Clark role, being a very solid, versatile five-man. I think he's got a very bright future. I love his footwork, love everything about his game. If he could just get, his jumper dialed in. But Edey, just the impact he has on the floor is greater than any other player that I've watched in college basketball this year.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. For me, it's still Trace Jackson Davis. Honestly, at the big man spot, I think Jalen Pickett is the best player in the Big Ten. I think he's so well-rounded. He does so many things well. Like I said, he is a big guard, even though I just said I'd rather guard a small guard. He's a big physical guard who's a matchup problem throughout the conference. I think Penn State doesn't quite have the best team, but I would love to see him on one of the better teams in the conference. And I think that, it's going to be interesting to me if college basketball, just kind of the way sports is trending, it's becoming more of an entertainment business. And if you have to start selling some of these players a little bit more than the universities with NIL and stuff. But to me, I think Jalen Pickett should be in the top 2, top 3 for Big Ten Player of the Year. I don't think he will be because of record, but I think he belongs in there. He's tough. So
yeah, no, he is, and I love his passing. I mean, he's the best passer in the Big Ten, I would say. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, he's right. If not the best, he's top.
In the league? Is he leading the league in assists?
He's up there. Yeah, I mean, some of that is usage, right? So, but either way, yeah, he's definitely in the conversation. I think he's the best.
But like you said, I mean, he's third. I'll give you third. But those top 2 positions between Edey and Jackson Davis are set in stone, and that's not changing.
Yeah, that's fair. We can agree to disagree, my man. Agree to disagree. But Johnny, that is another week of a Shot of Wisky podcast. We were super glad to have you back this week and welcoming Mike DeCourcy. Every All Badger fans, again, make sure you go follow along on all of our socials. That's YouTube, Twitter, IG, and TikTok with the handle @BeyondTheBig10. Again, the number 10 not spelled out. For another week, I'm Jordan Taylor with my guy, Jon Leuer. We'll welcome you back next week and stay tuned for all things Badgers and the Inside Peak. Go Chiefs, and we'll see you next week.
Beyond the Big Ten is a network of podcasts that aims to be your go-to resource for all things Big Ten. We cover the entire conference with shows hosted by ex-players and athletic alumni, aiming to be your go-to source of information and entertainment for your favorite team. Hosted by ex-Big Ten players, media, and insiders, our podcasts are focused on giving diehard fans and those alums an inside scoop about the teams and people that make the Big Ten Conference one of the most watched and most talked about conferences in sports. We're excited to talk Big Ten basketball with you wherever you may be. Subscribe now.